Hey, thanks for joining me. Hope you're doing well. The Phantom of the Poles is a 1906 book written by William Reed. It's the collaboration of multiple polar explorers who strongly suggested that the Earth was hollow, with openings at its poles. The book was based on the idea that the Earth is a globe, but as flat earthers, we know this to be wrong. However, the idea of openings at the poles leading to an interior world still holds up nonetheless. It's written, the aurora is not, as supposed by many, an accumulation of electricity or magnetic force around the poles. If the light was not the sun, what is it? A fire in the interior earth. There is nothing about this aurora that a great fire in the interior would not furnish a solution. He had the right idea. The aurora is coming from a source through the poles. Reed had no understanding of the function of the black sun within the earth, so he assumed the aurora was caused by a literal fire within. The truth is that the black sun produces divine green rays, virile energy, which shoots out of the center opening, along with some openings in the south pole. Ring magnets have their north polarity in the center and south polarity on the outer rim. This is the exact magnetism of our flat Earth. The North Pole is at the center, and the South Pole is the ice wall that surrounds us. These aurora lights can be seen in the North and South Poles. In the North, they're known as the aurora borealis, and in the South, the aurora australis. There are entrances into different lands beyond the South Pole, but as seen on this diagram from Na's Book of the Resurrection, these lands correspond with the sacral chakra, the chakra that rules sexuality and pleasure. The lands beyond the North Pole correspond with the crown chakra, the chakra that rules divine intelligence. The South Pole's chakra shows a circle inside of a square. Squares are masculine and circles are feminine, so this tells us that the lands beyond the South Pole openings are full of masculine energy dominating the heavily suppressed divine feminine. This alchemical Freemasonic symbol of squaring the circle is what's been done on this plane. I'm not saying the divine masculine does not have its role, but the fact is we live in a realm powered by the goddess, which I often show in my flat earth trinity model consisting of sun, black sun, and astral light. The North Pole's chakra leads to a void, and then a square within a circle, showing us the true balance of divine feminine and masculine energies, with the triangle in the center. This tells us the descent into the North Pole opening leads us to a spiritual ascension. Me and my blood brethren are interested in entering the North Pole opening, because this is where the true paradise is. And for these reasons, I never talk about the South Pole openings in my videos. In 1912, Marshall B. Gardner published his work, A Journey to the Earth's Interior. Also a hollow earth proponent like Reed, he too discussed the nature of the aurora, but this time with the possibility of an internal sun. We claim on the basis of our theory to explain definitely what causes the auroral lights, that the central sun flashing its beams through the polar openings is the cause. The aurora is the reflection of the beams of the inner sun coming from the polar orifice. Modern science tells us that when charged particles from the sun strike atoms in Earth's atmosphere, they cause electrons in the atoms to move to a higher energy state. When these electrons drop back to a lower energy state, they release a photon of light, and this is supposedly what creates the aurora borealis. But if the Earth's magnetism or electricity at the polar regions or around Earth's poles were the cause of the aurora, there would be a constant relation between its displays and the different instruments which have been constructed to tell the presence of magnetism and electricity. Compasses and electrometers would be heavily affected. And because of this, those sailing in the polar regions would have to take into account the aurora's intensity, but this doesn't happen. And that's because these rays are coming from the black sun, its natural divine green energy. NASA is an organization of liars and deceivers, but throughout these lies, we are revealed many subtle truths. The white sun above our heads is residing underneath a dome, and not in space. The sun below us, the black sun, which is indeed a black hole sun, is literally another side of the white sun residing in a different dimension. I've said this before. In NASA's depictions of black holes, there is always light seen coming from behind, and often a jet trailing from the black hole, paying homage to the fact that the aurora shoots from the black sun, and that at the center lies a void, where we reach a singularity and are transported into a new dimension. In NASA's supposed photos of the white sun, there is blackness hiding behind the sunspots, because again, the other side is a black sun. It's a subtle form of mockery and disclosure.
When pilots fly northern polar flights, they cannot fly directly over the North Pole. There is no North Pole. You fly around the pole. Why do you fly around the pole? Because there's a big frickin' hole up there. You cannot fly over the hole.
He's not making this up. No aircraft crosses directly over the true North Pole. None of the approved polar routes come closer than about 60 nautical miles from the pole. All pilots are instead instructed to fly around it, because if they flew over it, they would see the entrance to where the aurora borealis shoots out of. In my videos, I've talked extensively about Mount Meru, the magnetic mountain at the center of our plane. It's because of this mountain that our compasses are effortlessly attracted to the north polarity. Mount Qaf is the Arabian equivalent of Meru, a mysterious mountain of ancient Muslim tradition, which acts as the boundary between our world and the land of dreams. In Norse mythology, Himmelbjörg, which translates to Heaven Mountain, is the abode of Heimdallr, the protector of the Bifrost Bridge that leads to Asgard, the paradise realm of the gods. The ancient Germans told of Irminsul, a universal column which sustains everything. Otto Siegfried Reuter, in his book The Riddle of the Edda and the Ancient Religion of the Aryans, gave a visual of the old Germanic worldview, with the Irminsul in the center, connecting two sides of a flat plane, and showing a dome with the heavenly bodies projected on top. The Navajos spoke of an encircled mountain, which was surrounded by four directional mountains, shown at the center as well. The ancient Greek mythology tells of Mount Olympus, the home of the gods. In Tibetan Bon tradition, the sacred world mountain is Yeongjonggutsek, a four-sided mountain serving as the gateway into the spiritual realm of Toxic Olmo Lung Ring. This paradise resides beyond dualism, and is understood to be a timeless realm where peace and joy are the very fabric of being. According to legend, Toxic Olmo Lung Ring is aromatic, full of exuberant vegetation and beautiful landscapes. 4 rivers flow from Yeongjonggutsek, just like the 4 rivers that were said to flow from the Garden of Eden. In Mercator's 15th century map of a magnetic mountain at the North Pole, there are also 4 rivers diverging. In the Phoenician personification of the world mountain, the mountain carries 4 rivers that diverge from the center. And none of this is coincidence. It's all the same story over and over again. In order to access Toxic Olmo Lung Ring, one must purify the mind and realize the non-dual state. Part of the way me and my brethren have further cleansed ourselves is through blood over intent. We are permanently aligning with the vibrations of bringing forth heaven on earth, and thus we are becoming further spiritually cleansed. This is not the only practice we are engaging in, but a very important one, that is using our sacred blood to seal our names into the book of life. In about 2 years' time, we're planning on taking this journey to the center. If you want to come with us, replicate the videos you see and publish them beside ours. Together, we are side by side, so this paradise resides beyond dualism. In this context, dualism is the belief of the great conflict between the benevolent and the malevolent. Dualism affects this part of flat earth. This is what the tree of good and evil in the Bible's text is referencing, and the fall of man. We originally came from the etheric paradise beneath us, the Garden of Eden, and over time fell from our non-dual existence. We probably came here in part to experience the limitation of duality, as a sort of spiritual tough love imposed onto ourselves. Some of us have remained here because of the trappings of duality, but fortunately, with the awakening that's going on, we're remembering our divine origins. Living here denotes living in duality, and this is inescapable. But when we take the plunge into the center vortex, we will be renewed into non-duality, and thus our higher selves will guide us in our journeys afterwards. These various cultures had so much in common, and through my videos I've revealed indefinitely that the North Pole opening near the sacred mountain is a supernatural gateway, an interdimensional bridge that connects to lands beyond. According to Greek mythology, long ago, there lived a race of godmen of striking beauty who were free from old age, illness, and conflict. They needed not kill for food, but simply ate of the fruit and nectar that flourished in their garden-like paradise. The myths say that these people lived at the connecting point of heaven and earth. These demigods lived in a state of such harmony and resonance with the laws of nature and creation that they possessed godlike abilities and lifespans, enlightened beings of great beauty who were keepers of the knowledge of the true nature of spirit. In his book, The Arctic Home in the Vedas, author L.B.G. Tilak states that evidence of a great race of light-skinned demigods can be found in ancient Hindu sacred texts known as the Vedas, and these beings were said to have spread out from the North Pole. The Aryans were autochthonous, neither in Europe nor in Central Asia, but had their original home somewhere near the North Pole. These Aryans originally lived beyond the place where the sun god Apollo would travel to each year. Once a year, Apollo was believed to go far north to visit Hyperborea, in a life of music, song, and art, and returning to Greece in the spring, in a chariot drawn by northern swans. Apollo is the late Greek personification of the sun. Again, in autumn he travels to the north, where he spends winter time in Hyperborea. After the sun passes the autumn equinox, the sun's power starts to decline in strength. The days get shorter and shorter until it hits the winter solstice, which is December 21st, the year's shortest day. The sun is at its lowest point of power. This is also what the allegory of Jesus is, which I've explained in past videos. During the winter solstice, the sun briefly spirals in and out of the North Pole opening. In Val Valerian's Matrix series, he echoes this, saying, "The sun enters Bab Elu, or the Gate of God, at the winter solstice, and starts on his journey northward." As I've described most recently in my video on the 8th chakra, the Bab Elu, or Bab Elam, is synonymous with the sacred Mount Meru and the Tower of Babel. Apollo travels each year into Hyperborea, meaning the sun briefly moves into the center hole, and when it comes out, it begins its journey to the spring equinox. I want to mention that some believe Helios is the only sun god, but this is inaccurate. Apollo replaced the Titan Helios as the sun god, but the Greeks didn't delete Helios completely, but referred to both of them as the sun gods, depending on the temple and century. In Greek mythology, the seat of Boreas, god of the north wind, provided a northern boundary for the known world. Boreas lives in a mountain home, and beyond it lay Hyperborea, a land of eternal spring untouched by Boreas's cold winds. So Hyperborea was believed to be past the north wind, past Borealis, and in the same etymological sense, past the aurora borealis. This land is in closer proximity to the aether. That is to say, Hyperborea is not bound by the same physical restraints as here, and the Golden Age is still present there. Pindar wrote of Hyperborea, "Illness and wasting old age visit not this hallowed race, but far from toil and battle, they dwell secure from fate's remorseless vengeance." As I've said before, Miguel Serrano in his book El Cordón Dorado speaks of the blood memory activating in relation to Hyperborea. The initiation of Amor partially consists within the technique of the reactivation of blood memory, guiding it until being able to complete the immortal melody that provide the Hyperborean revelation to the initiated warrior. The blood is the liquid sun through which the memory of our extraterrestrial ancestors circulates. It is the Great Remembrance. We're being initiated into the Great Remembrance by spilling our blood over our intent. By uploading it, we're connecting it to the aether, and thus the gods of Hyperborea can literally feel our intent. This will allow us to pass the flaming sword. Those who do see the significance of this reactivation, write down, "I intend to bring forth heaven on earth," spill a few drops of your blood on it, and publish it beside ours. Our search for Eden, for Hyperborea, is our desire to return to paradise, the primordial spring of man's original existence. And this is why I make videos. We're going to drink from this spring, from the living waters, and be rebirthed into our original home in the land of the gods. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support. Stay well and centered. I love you all.
Mm-hmm.